The desert moon of Zathera hung low in the sky, its pale light casting long shadows across the jagged terrain. It was a barren wasteland, where winds howled like ghosts and survival was never guaranteed. On this desolate planet, humanity had carved out a fragile existence, mining rare minerals that powered interstellar travel. But tonight, something unusual stirred beneath the surface. In the heart of a crumbling outpost named Outpost Delta 7, an alien girl sat alone in a dimly lit holding cell. Her name, though no one bothered to ask, was Lyra. She wasn't human, though her appearance was eerily close. Her skin shimmered faintly with an iridescent glow, and her eyes were pools of liquid silver, reflecting everything but revealing nothing. She wore tattered robes that clung loosely to her slender frame, evidence of her harrowing journey through the wilderness before being captured by scavengers. Lyra's people, the Veilith, had once ruled vast regions of space, their technology unmatched and their wisdom revered, but centuries ago, they vanished without explanation, leaving behind fragments of their legacy scattered across the galaxy. Now, Lyra was the last known survivor of her kind, a relic of a forgotten age, and yet she carried herself with quiet dignity, even as chains bound her wrists and exhaustion lined her face. The miners who ran Outpost Delta 7 didn't care about her heritage or the secrets she might hold. To them, she was just another anomaly, a potential bounty for the highest bidder. They called her the Broken Heiress, mocking both her shattered past and the rumors of her royal lineage among the Veilith. Some whispered she possessed ancient knowledge worth fortunes. Others claimed she was cursed, bringing misfortune wherever she went. Tonight, however, fate seemed to have other plans. Kyle Arvid leaned against the rusted railing of the observation deck, staring down at the holding cell below. He was a man of few words, his weathered face marked by years of hardship. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and his piercing green eyes betrayed little emotion. Kyle wasn't a miner. He was a trader, traveling from one remote settlement to another, buying and selling whatever goods he could turn a profit on. Outpost Delta 7 was supposed to be a quick stopover, a chance to restock supplies before heading deeper into uncharted territory. But when Kale first saw Lyra, something inside him shifted. It wasn't pity, it was curiosity. Most traders avoided dealing with aliens altogether, fearing retaliation from xenophobic factions within the colonies. Yet here was this girl, sitting quietly amidst chaos, her gaze steady despite the cruelty surrounding her. There was a strength in her silence, a resilience that intrigued Kale more than any treasure ever could. He descended the stairs to the lower level, ignoring the jeers of the miners who lounged nearby. As he approached the cell, Lyra looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded, not in submission but acknowledgement. It was as if she understood why he was there even before he did. "Why hasn't anyone touched you?" Kale asked finally, his voice rough but steady. He hadn't intended to speak aloud, but the question spilled out nonetheless. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "Because they fear what they cannot control," she replied softly, her voice melodic yet tinged with sorrow. "And because I am broken." Her words sent a chill down Kale's spine. He'd heard stories about the Veilith. They were said to possess abilities beyond human comprehension, telepathy, energy manipulation, even glimpses of the future. But those tales belonged to history books, not reality. Or so he thought. "What makes you think you're broken?" Kale pressed, stepping closer to the bars of the cell. Lyra hesitated, then extended one trembling hand toward him. In the palm of her hand rested a small crystalline shard, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. "This is all that remains of my people," she whispered. "Their power, their memories, everything they were. And now it is mine to bear." Kyle stared at the shard, feeling an inexplicable pull toward it. It wasn't greed or ambition. It was something deeper, as though the shard recognized him as much as he recognized it. Whatever it was, it made his decision clear. "I'm taking you with me," Kale said abruptly, turning to face the guard stationed nearby. "She's coming with me." The miners erupted into laughter, slapping their knees and shaking their heads. "You're wasting your credits, Arvid," one of them sneered. "That thing's more trouble than she's worth." But Kale ignored them, pulling out a stack of chips and tossing them onto the table. "Consider it payment, she's mine now." For a moment, Lyra simply stared at him, her silver eyes searching his face. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" Kale met her gaze, unwavering. "Because someone has to, as..." They left the outpost together. Kale couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stepped onto a path with no turning back. Lyra walked beside him silently, her steps cautious but determined. The wind whipped around them, carrying whispers of the unknown. Neither of them knew what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. Their fates were now intertwined, bound by choices neither fully understood. Little did they realize, the shard Lyra carried was far more than a relic. It was a key to unlocking secrets buried deep within the fabric of the universe. Secrets that some would kill to protect, and others would die to uncover. The sun was setting over the jagged horizon of Zathera as Kale and Lyra made their way across the barren wasteland. Behind them, Outpost Delta 7 faded into the distance, its flickering lights swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Ahead lay nothing but endless dunes of ash-colored sand and the promise of danger lurking in every shadow. Kale led the way, his boots crunching against the uneven terrain. His ship, the Nomad's Call, was parked several kilometers away in a hidden canyon, far enough from prying eyes to avoid detection. He had chosen this spot carefully, knowing that scavengers often patrolled the outskirts of settlements looking for easy prey. But tonight, speed mattered more than caution. Every moment they delayed increased the risk of pursuit. Lyra followed silently, her chains jangling softly with each step. Though physically frail, she moved with surprising grace, her shimmering form blending almost seamlessly with the twilight hues. Her silver eyes scanned the horizon constantly, alert for threats neither of them could see. Despite her weakened state, there was an undeniable air of vigilance around her, a quiet readiness that unsettled Kale. "Do you know where we're going?" he asked finally, breaking the silence. Lyra glanced at him briefly before returning her focus to the path ahead. "I trust you," she said simply. Her words caught him off guard. Trust from someone who had every reason to doubt humanity? Kyle frowned, unsure whether to feel honored or uneasy. Instead of dwelling on it, he quickened his pace, determined to reach the safety of the canyon before nightfall. As they walked, Cal couldn't help but notice how much attention Lyra paid to the shard in her hand. She clutched it tightly, as though afraid it might slip away if she let go even for a second. Occasionally, she would raise it to eye level, studying its shifting patterns of light as if searching for answers written in its glow. "What is that thing, really?" Cale asked after a while. "You said it's all that's left of your people, but what does it do?" Lyra hesitated, her expression unreadable. "It is complicated," she admitted. "The shard contains fragments of our history, knowledge, and power. My ancestors used it to guide their civilization, to protect, to create, to explore. And now?" Cale pressed. "What can it do for you?" She lowered her gaze, her voice tinged with sadness. "It holds memories I cannot access, voices I cannot understand, and a purpose I do not yet grasp." Cale didn't respond immediately. There was something haunting about the way she spoke, as if carrying the weight of an entire species on her shoulders. He wanted to ask more questions, but the sound of distant engines interrupted his thoughts. Both of them froze, listening intently. The noise grew louder, accompanied by the faint hum of repulsor lifts. "Scavenger vehicles. They've found us," Kyle muttered under his breath. Without wasting another second, he grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her toward a cluster of rocky outcroppings nearby. They ducked behind the largest boulder just as two hovercrafts roared past, kicking up clouds of dust in their wake. "They're searching for me," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "They won't stop until they find me." Kyle clenched his jaw, gripping the blaster holstered at his side. "Then we'll make sure they don't." The chase lasted longer than either of them expected. By the time they reached the canyon, both were exhausted and covered in dirt. The Nomad's call stood waiting, its sleek hull gleaming faintly in the dim light. Kale punched in the access code, and the boarding ramp descended with a soft hiss. "Get inside," he ordered, ushering Lyra aboard. Once she was safely seated, he took the pilot's chair and powered up the engines. Within moments, the ship lifted off the ground, leaving the desert behind. As they ascended into the starry expanse above Zathura, Kale allowed himself a brief moment of relief. For now, they were safe, but only temporarily. The scavengers wouldn't give up easily, and whoever controlled Outpost Delta 7 would likely send reinforcements once they realized Lyra was gone. But there was another concern weighing heavily on his mind. "Why are they so desperate to get their hands on you?" Kale asked, glancing back at Lyra. "Is it because of the shard?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes. Many believe it holds the key to unlocking the Valith's greatest achievements. Their technology, their wisdom, their immortality. But they are wrong." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Wrong? How?" She hesitated before answering, her fingers tracing the edges of the shard. "This is not a tool for conquest. It is a burden. A reminder of what my people lost when they became too ambitious, too consumed by their own power. Their downfall began long before I was born." Her words sent a chill through Kale. Ambition leading to destruction. It was a story as old as time itself. Yet hearing it from Lyra made it feel personal, urgent. Whatever secrets the shard contained, they weren't meant to be wielded lightly. Hours passed as the Nomad's call drifted through the void, its navigation systems plotting a course to the nearest trade hub. Lyra remained silent for most of the journey, lost in thought. Kale, meanwhile, busied himself with repairs and recalibrations, trying to keep his mind off the growing list of unknowns. Eventually, curiosity got the better of him. "If the shard isn't what everyone thinks it is, then what is it for?" he asked, leaning against the doorway of the cockpit. Lyra looked up, her silver eyes meeting his. "It is a test," she replied, "a trial given to those who inherit the legacy of the Valith. To unlock its true potential, one must prove themselves worthy, not through strength or cunning, but through understanding." Kyle frowned. "Understanding of what?" "Of balance," Lyra said softly. "My people believe that power without restraint leads to ruin, that creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin. Only by mastering both can one hope to wield the shard's full abilities." He stared at her, processing her words. Balance, restraint, concepts that seemed alien in a universe driven by greed and survival. Still, he couldn't deny the truth in what she said. Before he could respond, the ship's sensors beeped sharply, signaling an incoming transmission. Kale turned back to the controls, activating the comm system. "This is Captain Draven of the Interstellar Coalition," a stern voice crackled over the speakers. "Identify yourself and your cargo immediately." Kyle's heart sank. The Interstellar Coalition was notorious for its strict regulations and its intolerance for alien artifacts. If they discovered Lyra and the shard, there would be no escape. Glancing at Lyra, he saw the same realization dawn on her face. For the first time since meeting her, she looked truly afraid. "We're not ready for this," Kyle muttered under his breath. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm despite her cool demeanor. "We may have no choice," she said. "Sometimes tests come sooner than we expect." Outside the viewport, the massive silhouette of a coalition cruiser loomed closer, its weapons array glowing ominously. Whatever happened next, Kale knew one thing for certain. Their journey was far from over. The Nomad's call drifted silently in the shadow of the coalition cruiser, its systems powered down to avoid detection. Inside the cockpit, Tension hung thick in the air like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Kyle sat rigidly in the pilot's chair, his hands hovering over the controls, ready to react at a moment's notice. Beside him, Lyra remained eerily calm, her silver eyes fixed on the glowing outline of the massive warship outside. "They're scanning for us," Kyle muttered, glancing at the ship's sensors. "If we don't move soon, they'll find us." Lyra didn't respond immediately. Instead, she held the shard closer to her chest, its faint glow illuminating her face. For the first time since leaving Outpost Delta 7, she looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. "There is no escape from them," she said softly. "Not unless we confront what they seek." Kale turned to her sharply. "What are you talking about? We can't just hand ourselves over." "I'm not suggesting that," Lyra replied, her voice steady despite the fear lurking beneath it. "But the shard that reacts to intent, to purpose. If we run, they will chase us endlessly. If we fight without reason, we risk unleashing something far worse." Her words sent a chill through Kale. He wanted to argue, to insist there had to be another way. But deep down he knew she was right. Running wouldn't solve anything. Not this time. "Then what do you suggest?" he asked finally, his tone resigned. Lyra hesitated before answering, her gaze drifting toward the viewport. "We let them come to us, but when they arrive we must show them why they cannot take the shard." Minutes later, the inevitable happened. A spotlight from the Coalition cruiser swept across the void, pinning the Nomad's call in its harsh glare. Moments later, a booming voice echoed through the comm system. "This is Captain Draven. You have 10 seconds to surrender or face immediate termination." Kel clenched his jaw, gripping the controls tightly. "Guess we're doing this your way," he muttered, activating the ship's thrusters and bringing it out of hiding. As the Nomad's call emerged into the open, the Coalition cruiser loomed above them, its weapons array trained directly on their hull. "Identify yourselves and state your business in restricted space," Captain Draven demanded. Kyle leaned forward, pressing the transmit button. "This is Kale Arvid, independent trader. I'm carrying medical supplies bound for the outer colonies, no hostile intentions." A brief pause followed before the captain responded. "Medical supplies? That doesn't explain why our scans detected an unidentified energy signature aboard your vessel. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding." Beside him, Lyra stood up slowly, her chains rattling softly as she moved. "It's time," she whispered. Kyle nodded reluctantly, powering down the ship's systems. Within moments, a smaller transport craft detached from the cruiser and began closing in on their position. As the boarding party approached, Kyle turned to Lyra one last time. "Whatever happens next, stay close to me," he said firmly. "I won't let them take you." Lyra gave him a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, Kale. But remember, you chose me for a reason." The Coalition soldiers stormed aboard the Nomad's call with military precision, their armored boots clanking against the metal floor. They were led by a tall, imposing figure in a crimson uniform, Captain Draven himself. His cold, calculating eyes scanned the interior of the ship, taking in every detail. "Where is it?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Kale stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I don't know what you're talking about," he lied. Draven's expression darkened. "Don't play games with me, Arvid. Our scanners picked up traces of Valith technology. Hand it over now, or we'll tear this ship apart piece by piece." Before Kale could respond, Lyra stepped into view, holding the shard aloft. Its light pulsed rhythmically, casting strange shadows across the walls. The soldiers froze, their weapons wavering slightly as if caught off guard by the sight. "You want this?" Lyra asked, her voice ringing with authority. "Then you must prove yourselves worthy." Draven narrowed his eyes, stepping closer. "You're coming with us, alien. Whatever secrets you carry belong to the Coalition." Lyra shook her head, her expression unwavering. "No, this shard is not yours to claim. It chooses its bearer, and it has chosen me." For a moment, the room fell silent. Then, without warning, the shard erupted in a blinding flash of light, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When the brightness faded, Lyra stood transformed. Her shimmering skin radiated with an ethereal glow, and her silver eyes burned with an intensity that seemed almost otherworldly. "What are you?" Draven stammered, taking a step back. Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she extended her hand, and the shard floated upward, spinning slowly in midair. Images began to project around the ship, visions of ancient cities, sprawling galaxies, and civilizations rising and falling like waves upon the shore. The soldiers watched in stunned silence as the history of the Velith unfolded before them. "These are my people," Lyra said, her voice echoing as though amplified by some unseen force. They sought to understand the balance between creation and destruction, life and death. But their hubris led to their downfall. Now I carry their legacy, not as a weapon but as a reminder of what must never be repeated. Captain Draven stared at her, torn between awe and suspicion. "If what you say is true, then why should we trust you? How do we know you won't use that power against us?" "Because I am broken," Lyra replied simply, "and because I have someone who believes in me." She glanced at Kyle, who stood motionless, watching everything unfold. "Together we will ensure the shard's purpose is fulfilled, not for conquest but for understanding." The room fell silent once more. Slowly, Draven lowered his weapon, signaling for his men to do the same. "Very well," he said after a long pause. "Take your ship and leave, but know this: if you cross paths with the Coalition again, we will not hesitate to act." With that, the soldiers filed out, retreating back to their transport craft. Moments later, the cruiser disengaged, disappearing into the void. As the threat passed, Kyle exhaled deeply, sinking into the nearest seat. "That was intense." Lyra nodded, her glow fading as the shard returned to her hand. "It was only the beginning. Many others will come seeking the shard. Some will listen, others will not." Kyle looked at her, seeing the weight of responsibility etched into her features. "You don't have to do this alone, you know." Lyra smiled faintly, her silver eyes softening. "I know. And for that, I am grateful." Outside the viewport, the stars twinkled brightly, beckoning them onward. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Kale and Lyra would face them together, as partners bound by choice and destiny. The Nomad's call drifted through the vast expanse of space, its engines humming softly as it charted a course toward an unmarked region of the galaxy. Kyle sat in the cockpit, staring at the swirling nebula outside the viewport. The vibrant colors painted the interior of the ship with shifting hues, but they did little to lift the heaviness that lingered in the air. Lyra was seated nearby, her attention focused on the shard cradled in her hands. Its glow had dimmed since their encounter with the Coalition, but it still pulsed faintly, as if alive and waiting. She seemed lost in thought, her silver eyes reflecting not just the light of the shard, but something deeper, an inner turmoil she rarely shared. Kale glanced at her from the corner of his eye. "You've been quiet," he said finally, breaking the silence. "Is everything okay?" Lyra looked up, startled by the question. I don't know," she admitted after a moment. "Every time I touch the shard, I feel closer to understanding its purpose, but it also feels like I'm being pulled into something much larger than myself." Kale frowned, leaning back in his chair. "Larger how? Like cosmic-level stuff?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. The Velith believed they were chosen to maintain balance in the universe, to guide civilizations toward harmony. But their ambition blinded them. They tried to control forces beyond comprehension, and it cost them everything." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Kyle rubbed the back of his neck, trying to process what she was saying. "So, what does that mean for you? Are you supposed to finish what they started?" "I don't think so," Lyra replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "The shard is teaching me that true balance isn't about control. It's about coexistence, about letting things flow naturally even when it's painful. Kale raised an eyebrow. Sounds easier said than done. Lyra managed a small smile. That's why I'm grateful to have you here. You remind me that sometimes the simplest answers are the hardest ones to see. Before Kale could respond, the ship's sensors blared sharply, snapping both of them out of their reverie. A red warning flashed across the console. Unknown object detected in vicinity. What now? Kyle muttered, tapping at the controls to bring up a visual feed. On the screen, a massive structure loomed ahead. A derelict vessel unlike anything either of them had ever seen. Its surface was pockmarked with age, and strange symbols etched into its hull glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the shard in Lyra's hand. It's calling to us, Lyra whispered, her expression unreadable. Calling to us? Kyle repeated incredulously. Are you sure this isn't some kind of trap? I'm not sure of anything anymore, Lyra admitted. But we can't ignore it. Whatever this is, it's connected to the shard, and to me. Reluctantly, Kale adjusted the ship's trajectory, bringing them closer to the mysterious vessel. As they approached, the symbols on its hull grew brighter, casting eerie shadows across the cockpit. The air inside the Nomad's call seemed to vibrate with energy, making it hard to focus. This feels wrong, Kyle said, gripping the controls tightly. Like we're walking straight into someone else's nightmare. Lyra didn't argue. Instead, she stood up and moved to the viewport, her gaze fixed on the looming structure. Maybe we are, but sometimes facing fear is the only way to move forward. Once they docked, Kale armed himself with a blaster pistol while Lyra held the shard close, its glow intensifying with each step they took. The interior of the derelict vessel was dark and labyrinthine, its corridors lined with more glowing symbols. Strange whispers echoed through the halls, too faint to understand but unsettling nonetheless. This place gives me the creeps, Kale muttered, keeping his weapon trained ahead. Feels like it's alive. It might be, Lyra replied quietly. My people built ships like this, living constructs designed to adapt and evolve. But something went wrong. These vessels became prisons, trapping those who dared to use them. As they ventured deeper, the whispers grew louder, forming fragmented sentences in languages neither of them recognized. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a cavernous chamber dominated by a towering crystalline core. The shard in Lyra's hand reacted violently, its light flaring brightly as if drawn to the core. In the center of the room stood a figure cloaked in shadow. It turned slowly to face them, revealing a humanoid shape, but one that seemed incomplete, as if parts of it were missing or fading away. You shouldn't have come here, the figure rasped, its voice layered with echoes. This is a tomb. Lyra stepped forward cautiously. Who are you? I am, or was, a guardian, the figure replied. Created to protect the knowledge within this vessel, but my creators abandoned me, leaving me to decay alongside their failures. Kale tightened his grip on the blaster. What do you want from us? The guardian tilted its head, studying them intently. The shard you carry holds fragments of the same power that created me. If you wish to truly understand its purpose, you must confront the truth buried here. What truth? Lyra asked, her voice trembling slightly. The truth of your people's end, the guardian said solemnly, and the role you play in shaping the future. Without warning, the core erupted in a cascade of light, flooding the chamber with images and sounds. Lyra gasped as memories flooded her mind, not her own, but those of the Valith. She saw their rise to greatness, their descent into madness, and finally, their extinction. Each scene was more haunting than the last, culminating in a vision of a cataclysmic event that wiped out entire star systems. When the visions subsided, Lyra collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. They destroyed themselves, she whispered, all because they refused to let go. Kale knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It's not your fault, he said firmly. You're not responsible for their mistakes. The guardian watched silently, its form flickering like a dying flame. Will you learn from their failure, it asked, or will you repeat it? Lyra stood slowly, clutching the shard tightly. I won't repeat it, she vowed. I'll find another way. The Guardian nodded, its form dissolving into motes of light. Then take this vessel as your own. It will guide you where you need to go. Back aboard the Nomad's call, Kale and Lyra prepared to leave the derelict behind. The ancient ship followed them like a shadow, its glowing symbols pulsing in sync with the shard. So, where to now? Kale asked, glancing at Lyra. She smiled faintly, her resolve stronger than before. Wherever the shard leads us, together, we'll rewrite the story of my people, and maybe our own. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched endlessly, promising new adventures and new challenges. Destiny. Lyra stood on the bridge, her shimmering form illuminated by the soft glow of the shard in her hands. Its light pulsed steadily, guiding them toward a destination neither she nor Kale fully understood. Yet there was no hesitation in her movements, no trace of doubt in her silver eyes. For the first time since their journey began, she felt a sense of purpose, not just for herself, but for all those who had come before her. Kale watched her from the pilot's seat, his brow furrowed as he monitored the navigation systems. We're heading into uncharted territory, he said, finally breaking the silence. No maps, no coordinates, just wherever that thing wants us to go. Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the viewport. It's leading us somewhere important, she replied softly. Somewhere my people once dreamed of reaching, a place where creation and destruction meet in perfect harmony. Kale sighed, shaking his head. Harmony? Sounds like a tall order, especially out here. Perhaps, Lyra admitted, turning to face him. But isn't that what every journey is about? Finding meaning in the chaos? Her words struck a chord deep within him. Kale had spent most of his life running from debts, from enemies, from responsibilities. But this journey was different. For the first time, he wasn't running. He was moving forward, with someone who trusted him, even when trust seemed impossible. Hours turned into days as they ventured further into the unknown. The ancient vessel followed faithfully, its glowing symbols casting strange patterns across the walls of the Nomad's call. Occasionally, fragments of visions would flash in Lyra's mind, glimpses of distant worlds, alien faces, and voices whispering words she couldn't yet comprehend. Each vision brought her closer to understanding the shard's true purpose, though it also weighed heavily on her soul. One evening, as Kale slept in the crew quarters, Lyra found herself drawn to the shard once more. She sat cross-legged on the floor of the cargo bay, cradling it gently in her lap. As she closed her eyes, the world around her dissolved into darkness, replaced by an endless expanse of stars. A voice spoke, calm yet commanding. You have come far, child of the Veilith. Lyra opened her eyes to find herself standing in a vast ethereal plain. Before her stood a figure cloaked in light, its features indistinct but radiating wisdom and power. Who are you? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. I am the essence of the shard, the figure replied, and through me the collective memory of your ancestors speaks. Lyra took a step forward, her heart pounding. What do you want from me? The figure raised a hand and images began to swirl around them, scenes of hope, despair, triumph, and ruin. Your people sought to control balance, to bend it to their will. In doing so, they disrupted the natural order. Now you must restore what was lost, not through force, but through understanding. How? Lyra whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I'm just one person. How can I undo centuries of mistakes? You are more than one, the figure said gently. You carry the legacy of the Veilith, yes, but you are also part of something greater. A new chapter begins with you. Together with those who stand beside you, you will forge a path that honors both the past and the future. The vision faded, leaving Lyra back in the cargo bay, clutching the shard tightly. Her mind raced with questions, but one thing was clear. Whatever lay ahead, She wouldn't face it alone. The next morning, Kale noticed a change in Lyra's demeanor. There was a quiet determination in her eyes, a resolve that hadn't been there before. "You okay?" he asked as she joined him. "In the cockpit," she smiled faintly. "I think I finally understand why I was chosen." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Care to share?" Lyra hesitated before speaking. "The shard isn't just a relic of my people's past. It's a key to their redemption. And mine. It's showing me how to create balance, not by controlling it, but by embracing it." Before Kale could respond, the ship's sensors blared again. This time, however, the alert was accompanied by a sudden burst of energy that rippled through space. On the viewport, a massive structure emerged from the void. A colossal ring suspended in the emptiness, its surface etched with intricate patterns that glowed brightly. "What in the galaxy is that?" Kale muttered, staring at the sight before them. "It's the Nexus," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The convergence point of creation and destruction. My people believed it held the secrets to eternal balance." The ancient vessel moved ahead of the Nomad's call, aligning itself perfectly with the Nexus. A beam of light shot out from the ring, enveloping both ships in its radiant embrace. Inside the cockpit, the air vibrated with energy, making it hard to breathe. "This is it," Lyra said, her tone steady despite the turmoil around them. "This is where everything changes." Kale grabbed her hand instinctively, his grip firm. "Whatever happens next, we're in this together." As the light consumed them, Lyra felt herself pulled into another vision. This time, she wasn't alone. Thousands of voices echoed around her, each representing a fragment of the Valith's history. They spoke of unity, of sacrifice, of learning to let go. Slowly, the voices merged into one harmonious chant, filling her with warmth and clarity. When the vision ended, she found herself standing inside the Nexus, surrounded by swirling galaxies and cascading streams of energy. The shard floated above her, its glow brighter than ever. Beside her, Kale stood transfixed, his expression a mixture of wonder and disbelief. "The shard has chosen you," a voice boomed, resonating throughout the Nexus. "Will you accept its burden and its gift?" Lyra nodded without hesitation. "I will." With that, the shard dissolved into a cascade of light, merging with the Nexus and spreading outward across the cosmos. In that moment, Lyra felt the weight of her people's legacy lift from her shoulders, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Back aboard the Nomad's call, the Nexus disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only the faintest trace of its presence. Kale looked at Lyra, noticing how the shimmer in her skin had softened, her silver eyes now reflecting a quiet serenity. "So, did it work?" he asked cautiously. Lyra smiled, her expression warm and genuine. "Yes. The balance has been restored for now, and for the first time I feel free." Kyle chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Well, that's good news. So what's next?" Lyra glanced at the viewport, where the stars stretched endlessly before them. "We keep going. Together." Outside, the ancient vessel lingered briefly before disappearing into the void, its mission complete. As the Nomad's call continued its journey, Kale and Lyra knew that their adventure was far from over. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, as partners bound by trust, courage, and the promise of a brighter future.